Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Damn Podcast. I am your host, Angie Machado, publisher of BeaverBlitz.com, joined, as I am every week, with beat reporter Jake Hedberg. Jake, the Beavers are super.
Yes, they are.
That was quite a fun weekend. I know you were there in the press box. We're going to talk about that. The Beavers had a huge recruiting weekend with some of their top prospects, and then have probably their top quarterback prospect coming into town this weekend. So some stuff to talk about. Won't probably be as long as we have been the past couple shows, but we wanted to take time here just to kind of recap what happened this weekend, preview what's going to happen this weekend in Lexington, and get you guys on your way for hopefully a nice little weekend of baseball. So Jake, let's talk about that Corvallis Regional. How electric was Goss Stadium?
Yeah, I mean, Friday night and Saturday night especially, it was off the charts. I mean, Goss Stadium is already one of the better atmospheres in college athletics, college baseball. But, adding the regional aspect to it just made it that much more stronger. I thought that Beaver Nation came out loud. It came out in numbers. The game on Friday was the highest attended game in program history at Goss Stadium. Super cool to be a part of that, which was first record-setting crowd I think I've ever been a part of. And really, I thought Oregon State played great baseball all weekend.
They did. That I happen to agree. And the game, it was rained out Sunday.
Yep.
Sunday was pouring rain. I know the fans were not happy.
I didn't think it was that bad, to be honest.
Really? Okay, so you were there. It was nasty up here, and I think what I kept seeing was just all the overthrows and the slides, and Oregon State had some errors. But I heard Mike Parker, was pretty beside himself. I mean, this is what Oregon State plays in half the year. Yeah. I mean,
the games in February and March against, the Sea Suns, the North Dakota States this season, in my opinion, it was much worse than what the weather was on Friday, or on Sunday.
Okay, so back to the record on Friday. Did they break that record on Saturday, or is Friday
the
record? Okay, they did not.
Actually, I thought they would, to be honest, but the weather wasn't as nice. Maybe I don't really know the reasoning for it not breaking, but it did break on Friday. I believe it was 4,200 something. A lot of people for Goss.
Yeah. And it sounded electric. I was with friends, some of my Beaver friends. We got together and watched that game, barbecued. Super fun to watch. Now that was I would call the most complete I've seen the Beavs in a while. I think those two games in Arizona, the first two of the series, they were complete.
Yeah.
And I would say that then Monday, when they came back to finish that game 3, they looked really good.
Yeah, I mean, they came out blazing on Sunday. I mean, every Oregon State pitcher that pitched, Lattery, Keljo, Hutchison, Bridger, they held UC Irvine to 2 hits on Monday. They had 4 total hits during the ball game, and Oregon State, on the other hand, raked. I don't remember the exact number, but they were well over double-digit hits, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that range, and it was really one of the more complete games. And if you take away that first inning, where I do think the weather may have played a factor in Higuera walking an uncharacteristically high number of guys. I mean, coming into the season, he had 18 walks.
Yeah.
And he had 5 in 3 innings. So plus 1 or 2 hit batters. So that was something that was uncharacteristic, and I think could be attributed to the weather.
I think it was, but he didn't have trouble. I mean, his fastball was on. He wasn't losing speed. Yeah. It was just the control. Do you think nerves too? I mean, being a true freshman.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like any players, a little amped up or nervous before their first regional appearance, or really before any regional appearance, but for a true freshman to be making the biggest start of his career. I mean, it's certainly expected to have nerves, and it's a good thing that those are out of the way now because there's a high likelihood Eric Sierra is going to have to pitch at some point this weekend.
Yeah, that was a sweep. Oregon State swept in 3 games, and it just watching UC Irvine and some of the. I watched a ton of baseball this last weekend, and what really just hit home, and Oregon State has had to do it the hard way.
Yeah.
Every time they've been to Omaha, but coming up through the losers bracket is so difficult. Just with managing your pitching roster, watching UCI's ace come in, that Pinto, he was special. It was his 3rd game. He tried to come in and pitch, and just doesn't have the same stuff as you might have fresh arms. So, so I do want to give you a little hat tip because last week on the damn pod, I asked you what the X factor was going into the regional, and you said pitching, and you said Keljo would have to pitch lights out, like the way that we know he can, and he did. Monday was probably Keljo's performance was one of the better ones of the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Keljo was nails. I mean, his last 3 outings now have been the best we've seen him play during his time at Oregon State. During the regional, he went 4 2/3. Struck out 7 and allowed 2 hits. Didn't walk any, which has been an issue at times. The biggest thing for Keljo has been his consistency during his career at Oregon State. He's always had the stuff. I mean, he's a guy who looks like a big leaguer. He's 6'4", 225 pounds, touches 99 from the left side of the mound. I mean, that's a guy who has ace potential, and he's shown flashes of it. And if the last 3 games are any indication, he's finally consistently showing that. And Oregon State is going to need Keljo to continue playing to this level if they want to keep on advancing in the college baseball tournament.
Yeah, I mean, because Aiden May pitched well, Kamat's pitched well, but to have Keljo there, Lattery, we don't know his status yet. I don't expect him to either go. Yeah. I mean, he was already on a super limited pitch count as it was.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just a bummer because Lattery's a kid who's, I believe this is his 5th year. I mean, he's played a lot of baseball. He's dealt with injuries a lot and, was really expecting a breakout season, and he just couldn't stay healthy this year. It's just a real bummer because he's a great pitcher. I mean, he went 7 scoreless innings until his last batter and gave up the home run for his first run of the season. But it was just a big bummer to see such a great player go down like that.
Yeah. But, now it gives Beavs a little more motivation that they didn't have to. Oh, where did I lose Jake? Did I lose Jake? Oh, there he is. He's back. There he is. So moving on to the Lexington Super Regional. Now, this is a Kentucky team that has been solid. I mean, very solid. I pulled up, let's see. So they are tied for 45th nationally in runs per game and are 74th in team ERA. The Beavers are actually better, but arguably Kentucky has played a way tougher schedule.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say for sure.
Kentucky has never been to the College World Series, which that kind of surprised me a little bit just with kind of the SEC history there. What is your early take on Kentucky?
I feel like this is a very fundamentally sound team. I mean, this is a team that doesn't really commit a whole ton of errors. They've committed 40 all season, so that's a fielding percentage of 98%, where it's one of the top numbers in the country. And it's going to be tough for Oregon State to get balls hit up the middle as singles because they have a pair of really good infielders. Grant Smith, I think, is their shortstop or second baseman. He's a great defender, and then I don't remember the other one's name off the top of my head, but he is also a above average defender. Offensively, pretty balanced. I mean, not as reliant on the home run ball as the Beavers are, but they've still got some power guys. They've got Ryan Nicholson, who has 20 homers this year in 54 games. Ryan Waldschmidt's a guy who I've seen his name pop up in first round mock drafts. He's batting .359 with 14 home runs. But really, I think this draw for Oregon State could have been a lot worse. Having to face, I feel like it would have been a lot tougher having to face a Tennessee or a Texas A&M rather than a Kentucky. So definitely a winnable series for the Beavers, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you touched on that. Their fielding percentage, they're ranked 13th in the NC2A. Oregon State's fielding is at 174th. And this was something we touched on last week. And we saw it again, this past weekend, some errors, some miscommunications.
Hmm.
Do you think this is something that we're just going to have to deal with the next, the rest of the season? Do you think Oregon State can tighten that up? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's something Oregon State is going to have to tighten up.
Yeah.
Playing in a super regional, you can't afford to give anyone a run. Every single run is crucial. And at times, the Beavers this year have struggled with it. And I think it's a mixture of things. I think there's a mixture of inexperience. Trent Caraway's just getting used to playing third base, and he's just now getting healthy. Also had surgery on his hand, which affects that as well. Mason Guerra hadn't played first base since his freshman year of high school, so it's another learning curve type thing. And another thing, Darwin Baparni's gone, and he's been
Mr. Golden Glove.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the playing skills translates to the coaching skills necessarily, but if you're being coached by a Gold Glover, you kind of have to assume that there's not a lot of coaching in the country better than that. And if you look
he's going to focus on some of those small details.
And if you really look at the certain positions or players struggling with, scooping up a low throw or making an accurate throw or fielding a grounder cleanly, it's players that didn't spend time with Darwin Barney. And a lot of these guys are younger, inexperienced players. Trent Caraway's played 16, 17 games now. Guerra, like I said, has played a handful of games at first base, and it's, errors are going to happen. Oregon State just needs to minimize those, because if they don't, it could be the end of what could have been a run to the College World Series.
I would also tack onto that errors base running. Just think about Monday, or Sunday night. I mean, and it's hard to put the blame on the slide over second. That was wet turf. Yeah. But then Monday, Micah McDowell was picked off at first. And what was interesting was Wes Clemens actually brought it up and kind of analyzed a little bit. And he said he jumps around too much. And if they're jumping around, they're not going to, if they're jumping, they can't necessarily jump back as fast. Yeah. Anyway, it was interesting to hear his take on it. But Oregon State's going to have to be aggressive but careful, I guess I would have to say.
Yeah, cautiously aggressive. That's definitely the right mentality that they're going to have to take to Lexington this weekend.
So last week your X factor was pitching with Keljo. What is your X factor in Lexington?
That's kind of a tough one. I mean, there's so many different aspects. I mean, there's the bullpen, which has struggled at times this year, but has really turned things around. I mean, they've been lights out over the last 2-3 weeks. They've done a great job at minimizing runs. I mean, you could pivot to the aspect of playing in Lexington, which is something which will probably be the most raucous environment Oregon State's played in since Arkansas, or since playing against Arkansas back in Texas. Lexington is going to be rocking, and that'll be tough. In Oregon State, I think having that factor playing in Baton Rouge last year is going to really help guys like Travis Bazzana, Gavin Turley, Brady Casper, Micah McDowell, and hopefully they can take those lessons that they learned in Baton Rouge, dealing with the hostile environment, and give it to those younger guys that haven't necessarily experienced, like a Dallas Macias or a Wilson Weber, guys that haven't ever played in that kind of environment. But the biggest X factor, I think, has got to be Oregon State, as we talked about, minimizing those mental mistakes. And because if Oregon State's locked in and really just ready to go, they're up there in the conversation for the best team in the country. But when they get in their own head and make those mental mistakes, you can see the frustration kind of brewing. And that's where I think Oregon State needs to keep their composure, play clean, good baseball, and I think they'll win the series if they do that.
Yeah, great point. I mean, I do think LSU was a huge. I mean, I don't think Lexington will be anywhere near
No,
even as
I
ruckus
mean,
as Baton Rouge was. The other thing I want to bring up too is the timing of these games. So Lexington is East Coast time. Saturday's game is a 6 p.m. pitch, East Coast
I
time.
think that's Sundays.
And
On Saturday,
no,
6
six.
Eastern.
It's
Yeah.
6 Eastern, so 3 o'clock Pacific. Sundays is 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. So I mean, that's a late game.
Yeah.
So, but for Oregon State, they're used to playing a 6 o'clock game.
I mean,
I think
it's
that gives them
nothing
an
new.
advantage there. And you are completely right. I was going to make that point that this is an Oregon State team. If they play clean baseball, like we know they can, this is a team that very easily could win this whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at their record, they have, I want to say 14 or 15 losses. 9 of those losses were by 1 run. And a lot of those times it was a mental mistake that cost them a run. If they clean that up, they're on a 45-14 team. They're a 54-6 team, a 54-5 team.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the difference between being a 15 seed and having to go to Lexington, Kentucky, rather than being, say, the 5 or 6 seed and hosting a super regional in front of a raucous Goss Stadium crowd.
Yeah, but that's again, and it all goes back to those mental mistakes throughout the year. It'll be fun. It's going to be a good time. So yes, again, if you are wanting to catch that and you aren't going to Lexington, make sure you're going to stick with beaverblitz.com because we have our thread in the lodge where we can all talk. And the whole point of the thread is Jake gives updates, but it's also like everybody's sitting in Goss Stadium right there talking to their buddies next to them. So it's a chance to celebrate great plays, commiserate bad ones, and hopefully celebrate after a weekend. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And now we're going to switch gears, though, to football because it was a big weekend for Oregon State football. We saw Coach Bray several times at the games, taking in baseball. I heard there were some recruits that were able to kind of take in some of the action as well. Not all of them, but I did hear some of them made it by or pop by. This was the biggest recruiting weekend of the year and of the tenure for Coach Bray. You touched base with the vast majority before their visits, and you've also now touched base with them after. What was the overriding sentiment from the weekend visitors?
Yeah, I mean, it really just continues to be the culture that Trent Bray's built at Oregon State. Something that really pretty much every recruit now has brought up is how if you look at Oregon State's coaching staff, Trent Bray, Keith Hayward, Ryan Gunderson, Kyle DeVan, even pivoting to the graduate assistants with Tristan Jebbia, Avery Roberts, Trevon Bradford, Tristan Dakoud, Kyrie Fisher. They're all guys that played at Oregon State. And all those recruits, they see that. They notice it. And a good handful of them that I talked to have said it says something about the culture at Oregon State. It says that once people get here, they want to stay. And I think that's something Trent Bray has kind of sold more than Jonathan Smith has. I mean, Oregon State had a great amount of alumni on its previous staff, but it wasn't really touched on as much by the prospects. Whereas over the last 2, 3, 4 weeks now, pretty much, I would say 3/4 to 2/3 of them have said that's something that's really stood out about the Oregon State program is that culture that Trent Bray has preached to those recruits.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, this is a staff, and when you really nail down into the grad assistants and the recruiting, it's a lot of JMO's there. So you have a lot of former Beavers, and it does speak volumes because these guys want to be there and want to stick around. So walk us through. It was headlined by Zadris Rainey Saleh.
I think so, yeah.
From Spanaway, Washington, 4-star linebacker. Got a couple more visits on tap. What was his thoughts?
Yeah, the big thing with Zadris has been the relationships with Coach Cooper and Coach Ford. We knew Coach Ford was a big hire out of the gate purely for his recruiting purposes. Not to mention he's a great coach on the field as well, but he's got that Seattle pipeline. Tracy Ford, Thomas's brother, is Hadris's Heaven on 7 coach and trainer. So there's that connection. And, you know, getting Coach Ford to Oregon State is starting to build that pipeline. And he was the main reason Oregon State was able to get Hadris on campus. And really, Coach Cooper, AJ Cooper, did a great job at kind of building a relationship prior to the visit and then cementing it in person. You know, Hadris called Coach Cooper the future of coaching. I mean, he's a young guy. He's 27, 28, super energetic, and the players love him. And it looked like Hadris did too.
Yeah, I would like. So you brought up, Coach Ford. Coach Cooper has been, I think he was kind of an unknown prospect, but this was a coach who was a GA under Coach Smith's staff,
Yep.
And now came back as inside linebacker. And it was someone that Coach Bray had tabbed from the very minute he was hired that he wanted to bring AJ Cooper back. The other one that I've been hearing too is Rod Chance.
Chance has been big.
He's been big. And I know Oregon State, lost Coach Blue, lost Coach Perkins. But I almost think now with Coach Hayward and Coach Chance, you're not losing a beat.
No, I think Oregon State defensively upgraded their coaching staff. To be honest, I think Keith Hayward is a better recruiter than both Coach Blue and Coach Perk. I think what Coach Cooper brings to the table as a recruiter has been really great. As with Coach Chance, haven't really heard a whole lot from the defensive line, as it's really unclear if Oregon State's going hard after one this year. So still yet to really get a return on Coach Tuiaki, but that's going to be coming once Oregon State kind of gets those defensive line guys targeted and on campus.
And this, yes, Cody Stigner was kind of one of the other highlights of this visit. Not highly rated, but really thought of by
big frame.
6'7", 225. The last staff had him as one of their top targets. This staff has him as one of their top targets for the 25 class. But this was not just an Oregon-Washington recruiting visit weekend. We saw players from Nebraska, Texas, Nevada, Florida. This was a nationwide visit weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like Oregon State's kind of expanding their recruiting footprint. I mean, it seemed like under Jonathan Smith, it was Oregon State more went heavy on Washington, California, Texas, Florida, obviously Oregon as well, occasionally Hawaii. But we're starting to see, states like Nevada, where Oregon State already has one commit, and then they had 3 players from Nevada visit this weekend as well. We're seeing Oregon State dive into Nebraska or in Arizona, really are places that they've had success in the past, but have kind of steered away from. And it looks like they're starting to get back, like Hawaii's another one, Utah. It seems like Oregon State's expanding their footprint nationally and going after really more national players rather than just focusing
local
on
Northwest. Yeah.
guys.
Joe Swain in the comments that the TV schedule for the games is great too. That's so much coverage. I mean, exactly. I mean, Beaver games are going to be on in more households than they were ever before with the CW and a couple Fox games. But you're right. Now, that Nebraska, Coach Bray coached the Cornhuskers for a few years, so has some connections there. But you're right. Coach Smith focused more on the Pac-12 footprint and then would dabble out a little bit with Coach Blue with his Florida ties and a Texas here or there. But that's, like I said, to see 2 Nebraska kids and they really got away from the Nevada pipeline, which there's so much talent in the Vegas area.
Vegas, and that's where, both Coach Hayward and Coach Cooper both have ties there. That's something Oregon State's going to get back into, and they've already got one. And with 3 guys visiting officially, I'd say their chances at landing at least one of those guys is probably pretty strong as well. But going back to the shifting of the footprint, I wonder if that has anything to do with the conference or
Yeah.
the whole situation around the conference. I mean, Oregon State's not played all their games in California, Washington, and Arizona now. They're playing games on a more, they're playing in Colorado, Idaho, Nevada, all over. I don't know if it means anything, but they're starting to recruit in the more of the Big 12 country, I'd say, with like Texas, Nebraska, Utah. I don't know if necessarily means anything. Could just be a coincidence, but I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. So all the returns and everything we've heard from our sources is that the weekend went as well as could be
Really good.
expected. Everything went smashingly well. Now, heading into this weekend, it wasn't like anybody was expecting these guys to all commit.
Yeah.
These are top commits or top recruits, very beginning kind of portion of their official visit season. Have some other visits to take. It's funny because everybody wants commitments right after the visit, but if you're going after the top tier prospects, they're going to take their visits to have things to compare to. So, these are guys that they're going to be in it for a while. And could Oregon State see a commitment in 2-3 weeks? Absolutely. From these guys, could it pay dividends? Could it be closer to the start of their season? The summer is going to be interesting, but this is also not going to be a big high school prep class. 12 to 15, right? Is that what we're kind of thinking?
15, that's kind of the gut feeling. And I have a feeling in the next 2 or 3 weeks, as things, as the official visit window closes before that summer dead period, I think by the end of June, you're going to see Oregon State with at least 7 or 8 commits. I'd really expect things to pick up here in the next week and a half, 2 weeks or so.
So, this weekend, 3 visitors coming in as of right now. Couple from Oakland, Bay Area, Elijah Washington. This is like a Coach Hinson special, a 5'10", 165-pound receiver.
I watched this film. He kind of reminds me of like a Sammy Straughter type. That's kind of
okay.
So quick, shifty.
Quick. Okay. Sammy Straughter, that's not a bad comparison. Deji Ajos from Bishop O'Dowd, an athlete, 6'2", 170. And then the highlight right here is Jaron Segapolutele. And I probably butchered that, but he is a quarterback out of Ava Beach, Hawaii. This is the target. Oregon State is going to roll out the red carpet because if they can get a quarterback lined up ASAP and get him dialed in, that is the cornerstone of the recruiting class right there, especially for the offense, and get him helping to recruit. We already have a couple guys that are committed and recruiting for Oregon State, but you get that quarterback in there and it's big.
Yeah, I mean, Sanga Polatele is a guy who could really be the quarterback that really builds this class. I mean, this kid is special. He is one of the top 20 quarterbacks in the country, in my opinion. He's a lefty. The state of Hawaii's produced some great quarterbacks with Tua Tagovailoa, Marcus Mariota, Dylan Gabriel, and he is a legit talent. Threw for 37 touchdowns last year for James Campbell High School. Lefty, big frame, 6'3", 210. And I'm liking Oregon State's chances. There's still a long way to go. Plans on committing after he takes his official visits at the end of the month. The Beavers are fighting with Utah State and Boise State as well as Cal to win this one.
And that's going to be big. And then just looking ahead, Jake Norwell, a local prospect that's one of the Beavs' big-time targets coming in the following week.
Straight out of the mean streets.
Yeah, straight out of the mean streets of West Lynn. I don't know what's meaner, West Lynn or Sherwood, but and then Javion Gu from Kapolei will be coming in that June 21st weekend. This is all fluid. Things could kind of change, but that's what we got right now. So not huge weekends, but some big time prospects across the board. Jake, how excited are you about recruiting right now?
Pretty excited. I mean, it seems like all the players I've gotten, all the recruits I've gotten the chance to talk to all seem pretty stoked about what's been going on at Oregon State. They've all said that the visits exceeded their expectations, kind of blown them away. And I think one thing about this coaching staff, I mean, Trent Bray said it himself, this staff is going to be aggressive recruiting wise, and the early returns on that look like Trent Brace is keeping his word, because that aggressive mentality appears pretty evident based on talking to these recruits.
Yeah, and they're swinging for the fences. I mean, they're not, playing some
They're
small
not
ball
shy.
here. No.
I mean,
Okay, so I mean, we are almost done for the. We have a couple questions. I have one in the lodge, and then we have one here in the chat. We have a couple here. Kevin Klupinger, have you heard any Big 12 news with the potential invites for gymnastics and baseball? Gymnastics, I'd heard that rumor was kind of moving far along. I have not heard baseball. I've heard independent. So will we see some Big 12 on the schedule potentially? But it's going as an independent schedule, at least for 25. Joe Swaim, does the NVIDIA president and OSU alum donate to OSU? Yes, he does. There is the $50 million supercomputer
building it
building.
right now.
Yeah, so
the construction's not very pleasant because it's about 1,000 feet away and it's very loud.
Oh, from Greek Row?
Yeah, it's right across like the
Monroe
Chipotle American Dream.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay, so kind of that old big parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's where it is.
Okay, so yes, he does donate to Oregon State. He's not donating to athletics. If that was your question. Mr. Gray in the lodge says he has a couple questions, Jake. In football, which victory besides Oregon will have the most national impact and why?
So for me, there's kind of two ways to look at this. There's beating a Power 5 opponent or beating an opponent kind of on the main stage. And there's two for that. There's beating Purdue and Cal, which is the Power 4 opponent, Power 5, whatever you want to call it. The Cal game is the only game, I think, where the TV time and channel hasn't been announced. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Then the Boise State game, that's one where it's 9 a.m. on Fox. So there's going to be a lot of eyes. It's on Black Friday. A lot of people are going to be coming out of their food coma to watch that game, and I feel like that'll be a big chance for Oregon State to prove on really a national primetime level that they belong. So I'd have to go with what might be a snowy game in Boise at the end of the season.
Yeah, that was the one that kind of initially popped up. Like you said, just from an eyeball perspective, that's a Fox 9 a.m. Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving. That is a get up and grab that slice of pumpkin pie for breakfast and watch some Beaver Boise State. Oregon obviously is huge, and I actually thought Air Force would be a big one, but I don't think from a national perspective that's going to move a lot of needles. I think it's going to be a tough game, but
I think it'll be a tougher game than a Purdue or even a Boise, but I feel like there won't be as many eyeballs on it nationally.
So from a national impact, so I'm going to have to agree there. I think that's going to be a tough game. Cal and Purdue. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people think Cal's good. I think Cal will be better. I'm not sold on Cal yet.
I think Cal will be good. They just haven't had an offense that adjusted Wilcox. And that's the one reason why I'm a little hesitant to pick them over the Beavers. But I feel like that defense is going to be good this year.
We have AKA 60. How's the football team looking? Excited to see my brother-in-law, David Wells Jr., get in action this year. I am excited to see David Wells too, because I think there's so much potential there with some of those younger receivers that we haven't seen much of.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a favorite of Coach Fentz, and he's a guy who ran exclusively with the first team back in the spring, and he's certainly a contender for a starting job here as a redshirt freshman, which is pretty impressive. Yeah,
it's going to be the team right now. We don't have media availability. They're just doing their workout, summer conditioning, or spring kind of conditioning with the strength and conditioning coaches. This is time for them to really work on their bodies. They'll start doing some individual workouts as well here after school's out, and we'll get to see them again in August when camp starts again. Mr. G. Gray also had a second question. Do you think the Beavers' success in baseball has the attention of any conference commissioners?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I don't really know how much of a sway baseball kind of has on things, just because revenue-wise, it's not nearly at the level of football or basketball, but I feel like it's kind of hard not to acknowledge the success that a program like Oregon State's had. I mean, they've been to, I want to say, 7 or 8 super regionals now in the last 12 years.
And there's not many teams,
Not many programs.
north in the northern latitudes that can even come close to what Oregon State has done.
I mean, if you look at it, there's 2 teams west of the Mississippi, Oregon and Oregon State. I'm not sure if
That's
Texas A&M.
crazy. That is crazy.
At least
Seriously.
there's 2 west of Texas. Is probably the better way to say that. And then 2. I mean, I think in the northern half of the United States, it's Oregon, Oregon State, and UConn.
Are the 3 northern teams?
And Evansville as well, if we're counting Indiana as north.
Okay. I mean, it's wild to me that I like Jake. It's not going to, conference commissioners can have one thought, but all the strings are being pulled by TV.
Yeah.
So and TV is making those determinations from football. So it doesn't matter that Oregon State has a top 20 gymnastics, a top 20 women's basketball, wrestling, men's soccer made the Final Four this year. It doesn't matter. It's football. What'd you say, Jake?
Top 10 football team at one point.
Top 10 football team, which does count. Anyway, Jake and I can't speak for Jake, but I'm still a little bitter. So
I've got my thoughts.
Get Jake a cocktail some night and he'll tell us all his thoughts.
I'll ramble.
Anyway, no, I do. Is it an amazing story, and is it something Beaver Nation will feel great about? Absolutely. Do the commissioners look at it? Potential, yes. I mean, it's hard not to. I don't see. Were there any Big 12 teams that even made the top 64
in baseball? Yeah, there was.
Oh, because A&M. Well, they're not. They're SEC.
They're SEC. Was there any that made it past the? I think Kansas State's in the Super Regional.
Are they in the Super? Okay.
Off the top of my head,
here, hang on.
That was the only Big 12 school to advance. Maybe
NC State. What are they? Are they ACC?
ACC. It was because I know who I lost. I know Kansas State advanced. Kansas State and West Virginia.
West Virginia. Yep. So Evansville, UConn, Florida Gators, Ducks, K-State. So K-State is there in West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, is it a great story? Absolutely. But it all comes down to winning this fall in football.
At the same time, though, I mean, Texas, Oklahoma State, they hosted a regional.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, they also hosted a regional. Central Florida, they lost.
Arizona hosted a regional. Lost.
A future. That's 5 current or future the Big 12 teams. Granted, 2 of those 5 are going to the SEC. That's 5 that lost. Whereas in the Pac-12, it was just Zona and.
It was just the 3. It was only 3 because Cal got snubbed.
So it was only Arizona, Oregon, and Oregon State. And 2 of those 3 advanced. The other hosted and lost. But just, I don't know.
Yeah. It's going to be.
It's interesting.
It's all interesting. And like I said, you hear baseball coaches and they don't like the realignment either. So,
I mean,
it is what I mean.
The whole thing with this RPI, in my opinion, is it just values the SEC schools so much higher. I mean, for all these West Coast schools are just as good or better, but they just don't play the SEC schools, so there's no really way to gauge it. I mean, for example, Washington State beat Kentucky.
Yeah.
Don't know if it necessarily means anything, but that's a Washington State team that didn't even make the Pac-12 tournament, or was
no, they didn't make it.
That was a 10th place team in an 11-team Pac-12 that beat the number 2 overall seed. And I don't know. Just
Jake's musings.
There's a whole lot of stuff that goes on. I mean, I don't know.
Well, like I said, you look at Cal, and I still think that's the biggest travesty that I've seen. I mean, they swept Oregon State, beat UConn.
Yeah.
And
then you got SEC schools like Arkansas, top 5, could go down to Southeast Missouri State twice. Woo Pig Suey. That's all I got to
Yeah,
say.
yeah. And LSU lost too, so
Yeah, that was an entertaining game.
that was a
against
really, really
That
good
was
game.
good.
It was.
And I'm really pulling for Carolina to go to the College World Series because every time Oregon State and Carolina have both been in Omaha, Oregon State took home a national championship. So
That is true. 06 and 07.
and in 2018 as well.
That's right. They were there too. You're right.
Played. They actually beat Oregon State the first game.
Okay.
I think and Oregon State came back.
Because I know, we've been through the losers bracket all 3 times.
So I'm a big Tournament fan this weekend. I would love to see them win.
A big UConn or North Carolina.
Yep.
And you're a big A&M fan this weekend too.
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted because I think Texas A&M is the best team in the country, and I do not want to face them in Omaha. I mean, I do because I think it would be a great game, but I feel like it would help Oregon State. I think it would help them immensely if A&M was out. I just don't want to see Oregon be the ones to do that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So before we wrap up, I just want to give our listeners, thank you guys all for listening too. I know these are all kind of variations of what we typically do when it's football talk. And but we just felt it's super important to get on here and talk a little bit about the baseball, the regionals, super regionals, recruiting. Coming up, JP's Weekly Walk-Off will be coming out on Friday, I believe. JP will get that to me, as well as Jake's previews and headquarters and all of the content there. Ongoing recruiting coverage. Jake has done an amazing job. I really can't thank him enough. If you haven't been reading his previews and recaps of from these visitors, he's touching base with these young men, getting their thoughts pre-visit, post-visit, what the coaches are telling them. Great reads if you follow recruiting. Definitely get into the know. You're not going to find anything this in-depth anywhere. And then summer, we dive right into opponent previews and breakdowns of position groups and individual players. So a lot going on in the next couple months before fall camp kicks off. Until then, he's Jake Hedberg. I'm Angie Machado. We'll be back next time for another episode of the Damn Podcast.